you're 1 in 8 billion people. There's nearly 8 billion people on our planet. There's not another person like you. So just by definition, that makes you special. You matter, because if you weren't here, the world would be different.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you feel lonely, isolated, and like you matter less today than ever before, then do we have the You Matter show for you. Today I'll be talking with Matthew Emerzian, founder and CEO of Every Monday Matters, and the author of an inspiring new read, We Need Now More Than Ever, You Matter. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about learning to love who you really are, especially in these social distancing times. That, plus we'll talk about the motley crews of WeHo Pools, triathlons and Clydesdale divisions, green and yellow Pumas, Robert Kardashian, an expensive friend, Hollywood after parties, swimming in Modesto canals, Nikki and professional superheroes, Annie Banani, African necklaces, Lincoln Log Gap, and Donne Borg Pro Rackets, semi-professional trash picker-uppers, and what in the world a kitty named Rooster has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Matt. Are you ready to shine?
That was an amazing introduction. I'm ready, I think.
Woohoo! If I didn't mention it beforehand, it's going to be your most fun interview ever, or double your interview back, Matt. So we're off to a good start.
Great start. We can stop right now. I'm buying.
Woohoo! All right. So before we dive into your story, do we truly matter in this time of social distancing right now?
Wow. Start with the big question. Of course we do. We matter more than ever. If anything, I think this is going to help us define why we do matter and how much we do matter. And it's forcing us to have to kind of recalibrate, like, what is this life all about? And because a lot of the things that we were doing, I guess, in the prior normal are different now, right? And so how do we adjust? How do we adapt? And I actually think that we're going to be learning that some of the things that we were doing before actually weren't so healthy for us. And there are things we can do and learn from this moment in time that actually get us closer to why we really matter anyways.
I love it. And I like to think of that which we take away from humanity, we want more than ever. So for instance, in the old days, it was, if a boy or girl you were interested didn't like you, you wanted them even more. So now with social distancing, when they take that away, we want connection more. But in this time maybe of feeling more isolated and more like I don't matter, I think we're afterwards going to go for what matters most even more.
I would like to think so, and I think we're seeing a bit of that out there in the world today, right? I believe that before this virus, took over our lives in the world, I actually believe that we were already suffering from a bit of a virus. It was a human virus, and we were already disconnecting from each other. We were already way too self-focused, and I think our priorities and what mattered most to us were way off the charts, and not in a healthy way. And I can say that from experience that we'll dive into when we talk about my story, right? Yeah. And I think in some ways that we were already disconnecting from one another, and I don't know we knew why per se, but now we have a virus that is forcing us to disconnect, and there's a lot to learn from this, I believe. And I think even social media, from what I could tell, even social media numbers are decreasing right now as well. People are not being as active on social media either. And I think it's causing us to really pause, to look inside and say, okay, who are we? And what does matter? What are my relationships? And how do I feel sitting in quiet and being alone? Because being alone in the quiet can be very, very challenging. But now we kind of have to. And I believe that we're going to come out of this better than we were before it.
I couldn't agree more. So let's go from there. Let's go back into your story and what is working for Robert Kardashian and your Monday morning experience have to do with anything, because you were in many ways surrounded by more people than ever, but you might have felt you mattered less than ever.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it. There's nothing like feeling alone in a crowded room, right? And so after business school, I went to UCLA, got my master's in business, and then I found myself working in the music industry. I started in artist management, and then I heard about Robert Kardashian. And, I'm 50 years old, so my reference to Robert was back in the O.J. Simpson trial days. This was before Keeping Up with the Kardashians and all of this, took place. So what I thought Robert was an attorney. What I learned was that Robert was actually a music man, and he owned a music marketing company. And my hope was that somehow I could meet Robert Kardashian and I could bring him CDs. There's those silver things that we used to listen to music on.
Mini Frisbees.
Right. Now they're Frisbees and coasters. I could bring him some CDs of some artists, and if he liked them, he can help connect me to record labels, and we can kind of create a farm system for getting bands signed. He didn't like any of the CDs or the artists I brought that day, but he liked me. And he offered me a job as a senior vice president of his music marketing company.
Let me pause you for a second. I gotta take you back to that situation. Okay. You come in, you're trying to pitch him some bands. One in particular, I think it was Virgil that you're working with.
Yep.
And he's like, nah, not interested in that, but I'll take you on as a VP. What was going through your mind at that moment?
I mean, it was definitely. There were two thoughts going on. It was bittersweet because number one is I wanted him to love Virgil. These were my best friends. I still to this day think that they're one of the most talented bands I've ever been around, I've ever seen perform live. One of the best shows I've ever seen live, even with some of the biggest artists in the world. So I wanted him to love them for sure. At the same time, I was excited. I mean, this guy offered me a job as a senior vice president of his company, and what that meant for my life was dramatic, and I think in some ways too, choosing to go this route of music, right, and the arts and managing artists is not the typical route for someone who just got their MBA from a top 10 business school in the country. Yeah. And I feel like maybe I had something to prove as well. Like, no, there is something here for MBAs as well, and if you will, and that offer from him helped me legitimize, I believe, the choices I made to not go live in Cincinnati and work for a large consumer brands company, but instead to work in the music industry.
Thank you for sharing. And I've got just one more question, then take me back into your story. Because you had similar childhood to me. We're going to call ourselves misfits in a good way.
Yeah.
And this is kind of Johnny makes good. For the parents, hey, mom, dad, I've got a real job. I made it.
Oh, no doubt, and I was the younger brother. And, I write about in my book that I joke my brother was the golden child, and he never did anything wrong. And I also write he never even had a cavity. Right. And I was the younger brother, back to your yellow and green Pumas introduction, who wore bright shoes to kindergarten. And I was a little different, and I felt deeply, but I always wanted to fit in, and my parents are amazing people. I won the lottery with my mom and dad, but there was no question in my mind that there were expectations, for both of us, and even my cousins and all of our family. I don't know if it's an Armenian thing or what, but we work hard and we do well and we give back, and I was fighting that pressure to perform and to deliver and to prove really that I was legit, if you will. And I know I didn't go into the family business, right, or didn't do these things. I'm forging my own path. And that does make me different, but at the same time, it doesn't make me wrong necessarily.
So then take us through your forging your own path. I read this today. I read your book today after yesterday I was hiking with my wife, and we were talking about building our business and giving back at this time. And the movie came up in my mind, Get 'Em to the Greek. And I don't know if you saw that or not, but I'm going, oh my God, I'm reading that story right now.
Yeah, Get 'Em to the Greek. It was also very much like the TV show on HBO, Entourage.
Yes, yes.
It was very much that lifestyle. And I grew up in a small town in Central California. So partying in orchards and these sorts of things to now working for Robert Kardashian and working on projects for the biggest artists in the world and finding myself in limousines with Salman Rushdie, and it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy, and so it was hard to keep my footing, I think, ultimately, in all of it. And I think that what I thought mattered most began to change. And it was the parties, it was the red carpets, it was the glam of it all. It was the Grammys, and it was doing well and making money, and all of a sudden success started to look like something, I guess, not so healthy.
And so tell us about your Monday morning when you cracked or more specifically, your body said, I have had enough of this.
Totally. There's that joke, and it's said 1,000 different ways. It's like, Jesus, where are you? And he's like, I sent you a boat and a car and a helicopter. And
yes,
it's exactly that is my life. And I woke up on a Monday morning. I was 31 years old at the time, and I was tying my shoes, getting ready to go to work. And I felt my heart tighten up. I noticed I was sweating profusely, and my breath was short, and I thought I was having a heart attack. I was an EMT for one day, so I knew enough to know what it might be
Matt,
like.
The parallels. I quit. I was trying to do good by my family and go to med school, which wasn't my path. And I had a choice of finishing a chemistry class or finishing EMT training. And I quit right before finishing my EMT training. Then I tanked the chemistry class.
You make me feel so much better. Can we just do this every day? Yeah. So I started to freak out, basically, and eventually I got myself to the doctor. I probably shouldn't have driven, but I did. And they did tests on my heart. What we learned was I wasn't having a heart attack, but I was having a very severe panic attack. And at the time, I wasn't familiar with panic attacks or anxiety, depression. I'd never heard of the medications, the Xanax, and our newest vitamin in our country right now. And unfortunately, I could say fortunately, that's not what happened with my life. And my life dramatically changed for the better, I would say. But I was sick.
And you found yourself, first off, with a most expensive friend. She gives you a book. Maybe you can tell us about this. It's not about you.
Yes. So I have my expensive friend was my therapist, Denise, and we did a ton of work together, no doubt. And a lot of it was just emergency crisis work in the beginning. We got to stop the water from coming on board. But then I started looking at my relationships, and then kind of in the later stages, she brought me Rick Warren's book, Purpose Driven Life. And I love you, Rick, if you're watching this. I've never read your book, but I read the first sentence, and the first sentence was all I needed. And the first sentence says, it's not about you. And she told me that until I know what it means to live a life that's not about me, I'm never going to feel better. And that was profound. When you're a narcissist working in a very narcissistic industry, when you're having days where you're thinking about taking your own life because you're so sick, and someone says, oh, it's not about you, the math doesn't add up quite right. And so she had to teach me how. I had to learn what she meant by that.
And it's fascinating to me because I'm thinking back to a book I dove back into a few weeks ago. It's taking some time to get through it. I will get through it, which is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and how he made it through Auschwitz.
Yep.
And having a meaning greater than yourself is so important. So it's ironic. Your book is You Matter, which is so true. And the paradox is it's not about you.
That's right. That is the paradox. And I actually wanted the book to be called You Matter, but it's not about you. But my publishers didn't think people would pick up that title. Because when books are in the self-help section, they tend to be about you, the reader, because that's why people are looking there. But yeah, you matter, but it's not about you. And the duality of that and the irony of that is exactly the message that I want to bring to the world, and I've been bringing to the world. Yes, you are important, and you're unique, and you're special, and you're talented, and you're all those things, and you deserve to be loved and be seen and heard and everything. but it's also not all just that. There's also a lot outside of you that we need to start paying more attention to as well.
How much did you learn, Matt, from becoming a semi-professional trash picker-upper?
Yeah. So basically every Saturday, Denise would have me go do something that wasn't about me. Pick up litter, feed homeless people, read to elderly, paint over graffiti. And it was kind of like my little secret Saturday mission that I was on. And honest to God, picking up litter became kind of like my jam. I loved being out in the city. It was quiet. I knew the Meals on Wheels people, the Starbucks folks, the dog walkers, and I would just kind of go out there in the quiet, and I found peace just picking up litter. And one day I was out there picking up trash, and I got a phone call from some buddies saying, "Hey, we're going to go up to this Hollywood pool party. Why don't you join us?" And I said, "Hey, well, I'm actually out picking up litter right now, so I'm cool. So have a good time." And I hung up the phone, and in that moment, I was like, "Oh crap! Like I just outed my secret. No one knew about my secret trash picker upper mission." and then at the same time, I thought, wait a second, this is it. Like I'm not the only person in the world trying to find purpose in all the wrong places. And how is it possible that I could get more gratitude and significance and meaning and warmth in my heart picking up litter than I could pursuing everything I pursued all week long? That was all about greed and ego and pride and money and status and fame. None of that brought me what picking up litter did.
It's wild. And so I'm going to jump ahead in the story. Then we're going to dive into some really cool things to inspire people here today.
Yeah.
It seems to me one of the most profound moments in your life, and it really hits home today because I'm very, very concerned about this when it comes to coronavirus, is you met a group of convicted felons and you told them they mattered. And I think they showed you how you mattered.
They did. That was a really interesting day for me. And again, I feel like my life has had so many aha moments or lightning bolt moments or God moments, spirit moments, universe moments, if you will. And that was one of those moments where I found out a group of convicted felons were using my book as part of a restorative justice program. And this is my first book from 11 years ago. I don't even think you could buy it anymore today. And they were using it. And so the judge asked me to come speak to them. And when I met with them, first of all, they were wearing full prison jumpsuits, ankle chains, waist chains, flip-flops, socks. And I'd never seen a human being in chains before like that in person. And that was heartbreaking for me. But somehow I had to recover from the sadness I was feeling to be there to provide some sort of value for them. And so I told them how much they mattered. And that's just what came out of me. And honestly, where it came from a place of gratitude in me, because as hard as it was to see these men and women in the condition they were in, they forced me to look at myself, and it really made me realize how messed up I was, because I had a good life. And I still wasn't doing anything if it wasn't about me, right? And these men and women, they're living in chains and behind bars, and they were still doing this little book called Every Monday Matters to do things not about them. Yeah. And so I thanked them, and I just said, thank you for your inspiration and how much they mattered. And at the end of that, one of the convicted felons, he stood up and he said, Matt, no one's ever told me that I matter before, and that's why I ended up where I am today. And he just started sobbing.
What does it mean to you? So they're in chains. People right now we're social distancing. We have it so much better than they do, but it feels in many ways like we're incredibly isolated right now and there's almost nothing we can do. What does it mean that we matter?
So the book is structured off of 3 parts. I matter, you matter, and we matter. And I believe all of those are equally important, for sure. Sadly, and it's not just how we feel right now, with this virus going on, and it's not just how men and women feel who are incarcerated. Also, go visit a senior home, go to an assisted living facility and ask them how they feel. And they'll tell you that they live every day feeling isolated and disconnected and like their life doesn't matter. Talk to people that work for companies. They'll tell you the same thing. I don't feel seen. I don't feel respected. I don't feel honored. I don't feel like I really belong and embraced here. Right.
Yeah.
And so I believe, these feelings are universal. I've had the privilege of speaking all over the country to all different groups, and I'm yet to find someone that says, like, I don't struggle with why my life matters. And we come into this life, we didn't necessarily choose to be like, hey, woman, give birth to me right now because I want to be human. But all of a sudden we show up in this world, right, and in this physical form, and here we are, and we have a lot to figure out, and it's not easy, and we struggle through it to find this real, genuine purpose, and what does all of this stuff mean?
So I joked at the beginning about the motley crew and the WeHo pool. If I'm pronouncing that even close to right, there's a gentleman swimming in one lane and swimming to the beat of his own drum, singing to the beat of his own drum. And I'm convinced he may have mattered more for your swimming crew than the fastest, best swimmer or coach in the world.
1,000%. And you're referring to Chris, the story in the book, and Chris is someone. So WeHo stands for West Hollywood. It's the West Hollywood pool, and we had a bunch of us retired water polo players or swimmers who would meet there and swim together. And we blessed each other because we pushed each other, and we were also a community. And community, I've been preaching this for my whole life. Community is so important. We were designed to be in community and relationships. My wife is an introvert, and I tell her, sorry, I'm not buying it. Like, you can have your moments to go be quiet and refuel, but you're not meant to live in isolation.
Your wife, Patty, and my wife, who's the producer, Jessica, and we do each evening, we have a community event online right now. And she's like somewhat off camera, being drawn in more. And she's an introvert as well. So I get it.
She's like the bass player in the band, in any band you ever see. Yeah, they're kind of off in the corner.
But they're actually the most important, arguably, player in the band.
Absolutely. They hold it down, for sure.
Yeah.
No doubt. And on a side note, I joke with my wife that like this coronavirus is like her dream come true. It's like, wait a second, I don't have to leave the house. I don't have to, and my husband can't go anywhere. Like, this is amazing.
We have a similar joke about my wife shares. She goes, so, we thought we had no life before. How have things changed?
Yeah, totally. But honestly, that's a whole nother topic, right? Is what this is causing even with our relationships at home, and I feel blessed. I mean, my wife and I feel like we're actually healthier now than we were before this. We and a lot of that is on me, I believe, because now I actually go in the kitchen and I cook with her, and I spend more time with her, and I'm not at the club playing tennis, or I'm not, flying somewhere around the country doing a keynote. And obviously we need that stuff because that's how, I provide for our family too, which is important. But it has been like, we have never been around each other more and shared this space more than we have these past, I would say 4 to 6 weeks. And it's been amazing for us, no doubt.
So let's dive in there real briefly. We're going from Chris here swimming. We're going to.
Oh yeah, we never did finish Chris either.
So we're going to double back to Chris, but I want to go with this flying around because historically it seems like many of us are choosing, and in fact you talked to high school students about this or surveyed them, and there's been this complete schism between what seems to matter most and what we go after. And it sounds like you are learning too, maybe to flip that on its head, and things are going to change moving forward for you.
Well, absolutely. And I will tell you something that happened. And the Chris thing too, just so everyone knows, Chris was someone he has autism. And I didn't know that. I actually I asked him if he was autistic, and he corrected me and said, no, I'm not autistic. I have autism, which I loved that correction. It's so profound. I'm not cancer. I have cancer, sort of thing. And Chris would swim every day over in the handicapped lane, if you will, and he would hum as he sang, as he swam, and he would sing songs out loud doing backstroke. And he was just so unapologetically himself in this world of judgment and wanting to be perfect and all this stuff. Chris was everything but trying to be anything but himself, and I loved him dearly for that. In terms of, yes, what does matter most, and I did do this study with high school students, years back when I was speaking at TEDx Youth, and I wanted just to get to know these students better, and I asked them what did they think their peers at school would say mattered most to them, and I gave them 15 things to rank, and it was like number one was best looking, most popular, largest social media following, newest phone. I think it was athlete or a cheerleader. Something like those were the top 5. And then I said, hey, listen, if you were given a chance to give an address to the entire country on who are you, like who are high school students today, what would you say? And they all said things like, we're gonna find the cure to cancer. We're gonna be the first ones to colonize Mars. And it was just like, oh my God, this group's amazing. But when I went back to the first question, the item that got the most votes for number 15 was to make a difference in my community or in my school. And so here was this amazing group of students who said they want to change the world, but the thing that mattered most to their peers was to make a difference in their community or their school. And at the end of the day, I actually believe that that's how a lot of us live our lives today. We when we think about it, even as adults, what is it that we go after? We're going after making a living, having nice things, especially now with social media, showing your perfect vacations with your perfect filters, and everything's got to be this perfect sense. And for me, all that stuff switched to, no, I just want to make a difference in the world, and I just want to impact lives. And the rest of that stuff is no longer, because that was my top 5 as well, even when I was in the music industry, if I'm being honest with myself. I was no different than a high school student at the age of 31.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing. What's fascinating is I'm going to call this a social ranking, and I'm going to put on an interesting take, which is we've had on Don Miguel Ruiz on the show, author of 4 Agreements, and he talks about the government of our mind, which is all these rule sets we have of what's important, what we can do, what we can't do. And so it seems like question number 1 you were asking them was, what are the rule sets of everybody else?
Yep.
You have to look good. You have to be popular. You have to make money. If we strip that away, what matters to you most? And it was completely different.
It's completely different. That's right. And so for me, I'm so lucky now. And I never thought that my breakdown could lead to this. But the work I do every single day, I see it as an act of service. And that is just, I'm just fortunate, and I went through a lot of dark days, but now I get to this place where I just get to serve people. And every day I wake up, it's like, how can I help people know how much and why they matter? Now, that can still have its downside as well, right? I'm an author, I'm a speaker. I'm human. I'm susceptible to, how much is that speaker getting paid versus I'm getting paid? How many listeners is on that podcast versus, all these sort of things can come up, in you. Also, when you're trying to save the world and change the world and help people, you can quickly forget how much you matter as well. And it can become, you were sharing with me, like in this moment of the virus, like you're doing shows every day. That's taking on a lot of work, and it's beautiful what you're doing. At the same time, it's easy for us to work ourselves to the bone in the spirit of making the world a better place. And I don't know that that's a good thing either.
No, and I'm actually doing my best to throttle back. So while I would normally be going for a run or a skate after this, the 3-letter word nap is coming to mind today. I do a process, Matt, called automatic writing, where I teach people to hear their guides, their channels, or their inner wisdom. We can say, if somebody's not spiritual, just to hear your inner wisdom. And what I'm getting right now is, it's not yours. So for yourself, for myself, we do the work, we serve. For everybody, we get to serve. And I want to talk about this next, about the we matter in all of this. But if we can step outside of ourselves and having to have a social ranking behind, well, how many pieces of trash did I pick up today? No, we just do it because we feel called and pulled to it. And that alone matters more than anything else.
That's right. And I want to tell you one thing as well. So when I had that experience with those convicted felons and they told me about, the gentleman stood up and shared with me, in that moment, at that time, Every Monday Matters was a for-profit company that I owned. Like that first book became a for-profit company selling programs into schools and companies all over the country. Yeah. And when I met that gentleman and he said that to me, I realized that this wasn't supposed to be owned by me. And so 5 years ago, I gave up ownership of the company, and now we're a nonprofit organization that I work for, but I don't own this anymore. And because I do believe that it's not mine, it's bigger than me. This is something for all of us, and that is the we part of this. And speaking of, a time like this, if we're not looking at this from a we perspective, with this virus, we're never going to get through this. And I'll be honest, it was upsetting for me to see people on spring break in crowded beaches. It was upsetting for me to see people in the grocery store hoarding groceries. And, those things bothered me, and they still bother me. I'm still bothered that, and I'm not a scientist, but I'm still bothered that 8 states still haven't shut down, right? Like, we have to see this as a we thing, because it truly is.
I've been struggling. I'm so glad you shared. I've been struggling with that too. I approach everything from a place of love and light and not from a place of fear. But when I'm out on the bike path, and I counted yesterday when I was out, there were 3 other people wearing masks. It's not about fear. It's not about I'm afraid of catching something. But what I'm doing, I consider as a service to help others, because I don't know who I've been in contact with, and maybe I will never, ever, ever get sick, but we could be carrying something. And so it's a way that I am serving. That's
right. And you are, because it's not about you. The other thing too, and this is the blessing of anxiety and depression, I'll tell you that, is, and there were times where I didn't feel that I had no hope. I felt helpless. And like I said, I thought about taking my life. Fortunately, I didn't, and I've gotten through this, right? But what it opened me up to was this whole other spectrum of human emotions. Like, most of my life was like, from good to great, Sure, I had my heart broken and I had a pet die or something, and I felt sadness and stuff. I didn't know what despair was like, and hopelessness and anxiety, and I didn't know what those feelings were. I didn't know they were possible. When someone would say to me, I don't understand how someone would take their own life. Like, I was one of those people. Like, I don't understand it. Well, now I understand it. I get it. Those emotions are very, very real. So what it did for me is it took my compassion and my empathy levels and just shot them through the roof. So now in any place I am, this is with this virus or not, in any place I am, whether it's in an elevator with you, I'm going to say hi to you. My wife thinks it's weird and creepy, but I actually think it's amazing, and it's weirder to ignore somebody than to acknowledge them. And during this virus, wearing a mask is one of those ways.
The term that I come up with, and I've got to ask you about Nikki. I wasn't planning on going there, but we got to ask about Nikki. Sure. Is you're being an ambassador of love. You're saying, right. And that's what I'm doing. If I go into the grocery store, it's once a week, one touch out in public right now. I say a prayer in the car. I remind myself of what's important. I go in, I probably am shocked, and I fall off of that. And then I bring myself back and say, what can I do to bring smiles to people today? Because we need it now more than ever.
That's right. I'm living the same life that you're living right now too. And so I think about how can I serve people in times like this, and what you're doing, which is so beautiful, is you're using the technology to still deliver the love and the heart and the spiritual feeding, that we need to still have. And, people aren't able to really go to church the way they're used to. People aren't, able to go out for dinner or lunch with people, that connecting is hard. And the flip side, at least I've noticed in my neighborhood, is I think for the first time, like in my neighborhood, everyone actually knows each other's name.
Awesome.
Like before the virus, not everyone knew one another on our street. They didn't. It took a virus for us to actually get to know our neighbors. And that's a sad but beautiful thing, because now we know each other, and now we're actually lifting each other up. And some of our neighbors are seniors. So every day there's texts. Hey, anyone need anything? I'm going to do my weekly, my run to the store, and so we're supporting and loving each other. So the community and life as it was before is different, but I'm still really experiencing a very we matter thing.
Thank you. I hadn't thought of asking my neighbors, and we're kind of isolated around here. I met my neighbors up on a hillside a couple days ago. They were on horses. I was out running around in the land behind us, and I'm going to text them before I go Monday for my weekly run to the grocery and say, hey, do you guys need anything? So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to dive into a lot more about We Matters. But first off, who is Nikki? Because I think she represents so much of how we can make a difference in other people's lives.
Yeah, so Nikki is a dear friend of mine. I met her 9 years ago down in San Diego. I was speaking at San Diego High School and to a group of students, and I discovered that Nikki was homeless. And what I didn't know was that San Diego High School had 100 homeless students at the time. I was completely blown away by this. And I discovered Nikki's story, and I'm not going to repeat her story because it's just anything tragic you can imagine happening to a beautiful young girl happened to her. But I helped Nikki believe that she matters. And I went to her graduation of high school, and then she graduated and she moved to Northern California, and she started going to college, and she has a job, and she even has You Matter tattooed right here on her wrist.
Wow.
Because words truly changed her life, because she never felt like she mattered. And I've had the great pleasure of bringing her on some of my corporate keynotes, and we will tie in a give back element. Whenever I have a group of people together, whether it's 10 people or 500, we're giving back. I'm just going to build it into it. So we've had some things where we give back to homeless communities and stuff when I'm with corporate groups. And I brought Nikki along on some of those to kind of share that her perspective as someone who, was homeless for a long time, and how much us doing things for them, meant to her and means for people. And, but Nikki told me, which is part of your intro, was I asked her, I said, Nikki, what was it about these words You Matter that changed everything for you? And she says, Matt, you're my professional superhero, and your power is those two words, that you matter. And the cool part about that power is that I can actually use the same power that you use. And so now she probably says you matter to people more than I do, because they just truly changed her life. And she believes that we can change the world with these two powerful words.
What if you tell somebody you matter? Because Nikki's been through a whole bunch, and so I can understand why at first she said, I don't matter. And it's so cool that she was able to flip it. But what do you say to people who are listening to this and go, well, yeah, Nikki's doing this, somebody's doing that, but me, how do I matter?
Think about it. You're 1 in 8 billion people. There's of nearly 8 billion people on our planet, there's not another person like you. So just by definition, that makes you special. You matter, because if you weren't here, the world would be different, because you're unique. And I know that I want people to feel seen and to feel heard and to feel loved. And not everybody, there's a spectrum of, you have people like Nikki who are just down and out, right? And those words meant everything to her. And then you have people over here that maybe are in a healthier place, emotionally, spiritually, etc. But you'll be amazed what those two words do for people. I get emails from people saying, whatever you did to my husband, now that he knows he matters, he is the best husband he has been in years. I realized that I mattered, and so I went out and I lost 30 pounds because I have to stay healthy for me and for my family. I realized that I mattered, and I stopped. I stopped drinking because I was an alcoholic. I realized that I mattered, and all of a sudden I became a better friend.
Something that's interesting is that if you're told you matter, and this gets back to a whole section in the book where and you talk about it at training, people have such a hard time accepting compliments.
Mm.
We've, in a sense, been a society trained since we were little kids. Oh, no, not me. I'm not that good. I'm not this. And that actually hurts us, doesn't it?
It does hurt us, and it hurts all of humanity as well. We've gotten to this place, like you said, where receiving compliments is uncomfortable for us. When someone says, "Hey, I like your blue shirt," and then you're like, "Oh,
Thank you, I
yours
deserve
too."
it.
Right? Yeah, and they're not even wearing a blue shirt, but just because they said they liked yours, you had to get the focus off of yourself. And you know what? If we can't be in a place where we can't receive compliments well and exchange compliments well, talking about the stuff about changing the world is going to be pretty tough sledding, because ultimately it comes down to how do we treat and connect with one another. And if we can't look each other in the eye and express love and gratitude and give compliments, and if we can't receive that on the other end, I mean, that is the foundational building block of being a human being. And sometimes it's okay just to say thank you. That means the world to me.
There's a monk I interviewed years ago, and I'm trying to remember what his book was. I think it was something like "Don't Worry, Be Grumpy," and his name was Ajahn Brahm, and he had the statement, "Thank you, I deserve that." Mm-hmm. Learning to, as you say, be bold, make a statement, take ownership of that government. Actually go to the uncomfortable level of taking ownership of how great you truly are.
Well, so I love knowing that. Thank you for sharing that, because I actually create an experience with people where they have to get uncomfortable with it. And for example, I'll give you 1 minute to write down 5 things that you do well. It's the most awkward thing for them to think about doing. But when I'm watching it happen, I see a room full of smile and laughter and joy, and they're high-fiving each other, and it's this amazing experience to see. Like, it could be awkward to say thank you to a compliment. It could be awkward to compliment yourself. And this is not about being braggadocious, obviously. But we have to be able to say, you know what, thank you. And feel I'm worthy of that. I think that's what it is, right? I'm worthy of that.
You're making me think, if we walked around, even in our homes in this social isolation time, and started complimenting ourselves for making breakfast, complimenting ourselves for brushing our if we started complimenting ourselves, I think that would actually spill over until where we'd be out on the streets doing things for other people and being able to finally receive that and wanting to do more of it.
That's right. Well, think about this. If it's hard for you to receive a compliment and it's uncomfortable for you, why would you want to do that to anyone else? Because your perception is that you're going to make them uncomfortable by doing it, because it makes you uncomfortable as well. So think about how fun it would be if, like you said, we compliment ourselves on all those things.
So, Matt, I love you. You're doing an awesome job. I want to give you the biggest compliment and man hug in the world for how great of a job you're doing. And it gets me to another question, which I hadn't planned on going on. You're most welcome.
Okay.
Somewhere in the book, and it just popped up in the psyche, you said there's a challenge with the statement, you must be able to love yourself before you can love another.
Sure. I want to love myself, and maybe that helps me love people better. At the same time, through loving other people, I'm also going to learn to love myself, because we do live in a social context, and that's why I do struggle with this idea of self-help, because we don't all live on our private islands of one, where all I can do every day is work on myself. And, I don't know what that even looks like. I mean, humanity completely isolated to islands of one is a scary thing, although maybe we're close to it right now. We live in social context, and so we find meaning in each other. In Africa, they call it Ubuntu, and I am through you and because of you, and I believe that wholeheartedly. And ultimately, that's the message of this book. That somewhere there's this Venn diagram of I matter, and then there's a circle of you matter, and there's a circle of we matter, and somewhere right in the middle of that, where they all intersect, is, I believe, where we are at our best. Where in any moment we are seeing the I matter, the you matter, and the we matter in that experience and in that circumstance at all times.
Thank you. I want to come back to this, and then we're going to start to wrap things up. Ubuntu. I am through you. Break that down for me, and I can't think of a more powerful way to live than that during this time, maybe at any time.
Yeah, and on a global level, right? I mean, now we are, this COVID story is this global story now, and I mean, how could you not feel right now for Italy, for an entire country, and that's just one of many stories. So Ubuntu, I learned through a dear friend. Her name is Tararai Trent, and Tararai
Vitamin T.
Vitamin T is what I call her, and she truly is a vitamin. And Tararai, her story is amazing, and you should probably have her on your show at some time for sure. But she was told by her mother that if you write down your dreams and bury them underground, that they can grow and come true. And so she wrote down her 5 dreams, and the first 4 came true.
What were they?
She was a woman in Zimbabwe, which they were not, a girl. They were not allowed to get an education. And her father sold her off for a cow at the age of like 11 or 12. She had 3 kids by 18, etc. So she wanted an education. So number one, she wanted to come to America. She wanted to go to college, get her master's, get her PhD. And those were her first 4. And then her 5th one was to go back to Zimbabwe and to build a school for girls to go to school. And Oprah had her on her show years ago and gifted her $1.5 million to go back home and to build that school for girls. And Vitamin T, Tararai, she taught me about Ubuntu. And that is the we matter part of, I guess in my language, is that we are because of each other, that we are through each other, that without one another, life has no meaning at all. Because a person by yourself, completely isolated with no relationship, isn't necessarily a life anyways. And I love it. I think it's so beautiful.
Conversely, I'm going to have to flip it on its head right now. I don't want anybody thinking that if you are isolated right now that you don't matter. Everything you do matters during this time. But you can use this as motivation and going, is it a phone call I make? Is it a smile I give? Is it a gesture? What can I do to use this magical gift of a life that I have to make any difference? And everything you do matters.
Absolutely. And we have to find unique ways to reach out right now, and it is a challenge. I'll tag on to what you just said too, by the way.
Thank you.
Because what we're experiencing right now is absolutely real, and I'm working harder than I've ever worked during this time, but that doesn't mean everybody is, right? Some of us are sitting at home and we don't know when our next meal is going to come from. We don't know if I'm going to have a job again. We don't know. There's so much. I mean, I was even reading that, that divorce rates are skyrocketing, right? There's a lot of things happening that are affecting us deeply during this time. And in an I matter sort of way, you take care of yourself, and we still have to find ways to connect with somebody, to get exercise. We can't just not exercise. And if you're really struggling, then reach out for help to somebody. Our secrets are our sickness.
I have a phone call to make immediately after we get done with this for somebody in need who needs to know how much he matters during this time.
Absolutely. And what's empowering, I would like to think it's empowering that in this times of this virus, we all have an important role to play. And if we all do it, we can stop this thing. And so we all matter the same. We have to stay home. We have to follow the protocols, wear a mask, do everything that we can do. And if all of us do that, it's almost like in some ways our hierarchy has been flattened.
Yes.
Right? As a humanity. Like we're almost like just stripped down to, okay, I'm just a dude here and I'm at home and I'm no longer a title. I'm no longer a corner office. I'm no longer, rich or whatever. I'm just me and I'm home and I'm surviving. And I think that crisis has a way of doing that for us, whether it's a tornado ripping through Nashville or fires in California or a virus. There is something about when these things come, they do strip us away from all of the bad and the bad tendencies and habits that we have. And they ask us to step out as better people and to serve each other more. And I mean, I've been so inspired and humbled by the people who work in healthcare. I just watch them with such great admiration. And even though sometimes I feel helpless, like I can't do much here, the one thing I can do is send them love and positivity and prayer. If I just did that all day, if I just lifted people up all day, and we all can do that, we all have the power to do that. If you're bored, go lift the people up who are fighting the fight out there.
Woohoo! There's a guest we've had on the show, Ervin Laszlo. He's a two-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee. He's won many World Peace Prizes, and he talks about us. His next book is coming out on the Akashic field, an energetic field that is everything. And he's a scientist, so he's coming from a quantum physics point of view, and we are all swimming in a field of energy. Yeah. If we simply stayed in our home and focused on sending out love to the medical care workers, to people in the grocery stores, even that makes a massive difference.
A massive difference. Absolutely. And, I don't believe even before the virus that the people who serve us ever have received enough love.
Couldn't agree more.
And we take it for granted, whether that's the barista at Starbucks or the teller at the bank or the cashier at the grocery store or people in healthcare. I don't think they've ever really received the appreciation that they deserve ever. And so in a time like this, I think that hopefully it's helped us all appreciate them even more. And when this is done, and it will be done at some point, that we don't lose that appreciation. Like, I believe that this is making us better in so many ways, and that's exciting. But it's only exciting to me is if we continue it when the waters go back down, right, and the winds die.
I think there'll be a new normal, Matt. I'm very hopeful. And I think part of the reason there's going to be a new normal, and please forgive me for saying this, everybody, I don't think there's going to be a quick fix or a quick return. I don't think we're ever going to return to old. But because it is going to drag on much longer than we expect, that's what my rough crystal ball says, is this is not over tomorrow. It is going to grind us. And I think in that grinding, something new is going to come out of it that couldn't have been birthed before.
I agree with you totally. And I think in a lot of ways we needed grinding a little bit. I hate to say that, but it was getting out of hand, and we were not treating each other well. I don't believe the judgment and the racism that we're still seeing today, the way we're treating our environment. Like, I hope people are finally seeing, like, if you look at the images now of our atmosphere, since we've all been locked at home, and how our planet is actually healing itself because we're not out there polluting the air. And for years and years and decades, we've been saying, hey, does man have a negative impact on the environment? There's no arguing anymore that we don't, because look at what's happening now, right? I was reading this morning, like, there's villages that can now see, like, the Himalayan mountains that they haven't seen them in 30 years. Wow. And now the air is so clean that they could actually see the Himalayas. So let's remember that, right? And let's let this grinding make us, like a diamond, if you will, right? Let it make us better.
I love it. And the animals are coming out to play. Few last questions here, Matt.
Yeah.
First off, what is our personal mission statement?
The final payoff for the book and for the reader is that I want them to be able to answer a question or to make a bold statement, if you will. And I learned this from actually two young boys from Africa. They were in a choir that they were orphans. They came to America to tour and do concerts, and I signed up to host two of them. And they were 5 and 7. And I asked them one day, can you imagine if you're going to come stay with me for a week, you're going to be decked out in You Matter stuff for sure. You're going to have T-shirts and hats and everything. And these kids were. And one day I asked them, if someone asked them why they mattered, what would they say? And the 5-year-old said, I matter because I love to dance. And when I dance, it makes people happy. And so that's how I spread joy. And the 7-year-old said, I matter because one day I'm going to change my country. And here's a 7-year-old who lost both his parents to HIV or to civil war in his country. And then I had this moment of, oh my God, what if they asked me the same question? What would I say? Why do I matter? And I didn't have an answer for it. And so the journey of this new book is to help people explore through this I matter, you matter, we matter kind of these lenses. And at the end of it, to have this new sense of themselves, an understanding of who they are, and truly love themselves in a whole new way, to be able to answer the statement, my name is, and I matter because.
My name is Michael, and I matter because I help you, Matt, to get out your story.
Thank you. You do matter. You matter to so many, and you share stories, and you lift people up, and you know what people can do during a time like this too, if they're really feeling it? Just watch episode 463, whatever, 5,000, whatever you have now.
I think this will be like episode 1326 or something like that.
Yeah, this is better than TED Talks. Just watch your show every day.
Thank you so much. I deserve that and received, and right back at you, Matt, because everything that you're doing matters. And I was reading about your nonprofit earlier today at a time where my wife is on fire. We started right before this offering $7 programs. We now have been doing for everybody that gets into different programs. We've been giving away programs, and we're saying how much can we give away during this time, which is what you're living, Matt.
Absolutely. I think it's just the times to give. I think at the end of this, speaking of things will be changed, even if you take this not from an individual level or a small business level, but even some of the bigger brands out there in the world, it's going to be the brands that showed up to serve and not in a lip service sort of way. Like you really can feel like authentically, organically, like that brand showed up and made a difference. People are never going to forget it. And I think it will have an impact. I'll tell you one change really quickly I think should change is we got a new puppy during this time. And I had to take our puppy to the vet. And they're doing telemedicine at the vet. So I pulled into the parking lot.
Yeah.
I called the number. They come out. They got our puppy, Romy. They took Romy in. And then they called me on FaceTime. And so I FaceTime with the doctor. They did the procedures they had to do, and they took my credit card over the FaceTime, and they brought Romy right back out. Because I don't like going into vets. They make me feel sad, and I don't like everyone's animals running and kids running around everywhere. And now I could just go and pull up and telemedicine my vet visits. I think it's going to change the way veterinarians do their job.
I've got to ask, because we have 3 rescue kitties here.
Okay.
How is Romy doing with Rooster the kitten, or the kitty?
Well, so we have 3. I walked myself into this, didn't I? We have 3 cats, 3 rescue cats, and a puppy. Rocky, Rooster, Rambo are the cats.
Yes. Very nice.
Romy's the dog. What's interesting about this is Rambo, our black cat who lives in our back house,
Mhm.
And I often work back there as well. So Rambo gets love. Rambo is a killer of all other animals. He found us, came in my back door, and
Yeah.
wanted to eat everything. So we forced Rambo to be an indoor cat for his health and for the health of all cats in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Rocky and Rooster are in the front house, and they love everyone and on other animals. With Romy, it's completely flipped. Rambo in the back house loves Romy.
Yeah.
And they just lay with each other and they play with each other. The cats in the front house where Romy spends most of her time, they're a little bit like, okay, what the frick just happened? Life was peaceful before. And now I have this miniature wiener dog chasing me all over the house, and I'm not enjoying it so much, especially Rooster. Rooster is he's our alpha male.
Yeah.
He rules the roost, and he's not he'll slap Romy around a little bit harder than we like sometimes. But you know what? It takes time. They're all sweet, loving creatures, and they're going to get along just fine.
Very cool. And on that note, we are all sweet, loving creatures, and we are going to get along fine when we realize that I matter, you matter, and we matter. Any last words of wisdom you want to share with people, Matt?
Just be patient and let's just get through this together. And I agree that it is going to take longer than we want it to. But I also believe that we will get through this and just find new and fun ways to occupy your time and know how much you matter. And if I challenge you with one thing,
yeah,
I challenge your listeners to start a new hobby. Go start a new hobby, whatever it is.
What's yours?
Well, I have a couple, but puzzling lately has become something I've fallen in love with. And so we have a small group of friends that we recycle puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
And I just finished the hardest puzzle I think I've ever done in my life. It was so challenging, but I don't know. Puzzling is something just really good for my soul. I enjoy it. Another hobby was playing tennis, which then became actually more than a hobby. What's your hobby besides your rollerblades?
Well, I've been tinkering. So all of these toys that I have, like my skates, my bicycles, things like this, that I always said someday I'll get around to upgrading or doing this. Now I'm challenging myself to use this as the time because my excuse has been, well, I'm so busy with the show. Yep. Someday I will get to that. Now I'm tackling because I see taking care of myself now as being so critical to helping take care of others. That the things I said I don't have time to do, I'm making time for now.
That's amazing. And a new hobby, and if any of your listeners know how to do this and I want to learn, is sewing.
Ooh, very, very cool.
To know how to sew. And I thought if I could learn how to sew and sew masks for people and give them out, like in my community or wherever, I just think it'd be so fun and rewarding and a new challenge, kind of creative outlet for me.
I've been challenging our listeners, and I think some of them may actually start doing it because I've been saying I want to see things like smiley face masks. I want masks that when you wear them, make people smile.
Totally. Yeah. Let's start a mask distribution center and we'll start sewing.
Woohoo! I love it. I got to let you go, Matt. A giant hug. This has been phenomenal. I have enjoyed this so much. Where can people go to find your beautiful book, Matt, You Matter?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Powell's, like all those places that sell books. Also, if you want to buy in bulk sales, you would go to porchlight.com, Porchlight Books, to get bulk purchases. But it's out everywhere. And I'm really proud of it, and I've heard amazing things back from people and how much it's blessed their lives, and it's humbling. But I just have to say thank you, right?
Woohoo! And is there a website you want to send people to then, Matt?
Sure, everymondaymatters.org. That's our nonprofit organization, and right now we're in the process of doing a major launch. It's going to launch on Monday. A brand new education portal. We serve over 2 million students nationwide with a social and emotional learning curriculum, helping our kids connect with how much and why they matter. And now our kids are all home, and our moms and dads and family members are trying to figure out how to educate them, and they're struggling with that. And And so we are launching free curriculum for all of our educators and free curriculum and programs for our parents who are homeschooling and live classes that we're going to be teaching 3 times a week on Zoom. All completely free for families and educators and students to have access to.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get you matter, and begin learning how to love who you really are today and shine bright. Woohoo! Woohoo! I love it, Matt. I love it. I love it. I love it.
I'm honored to be on your show. I've been a fan, and I still am a fan, and just keep doing what you're doing, and to finally meet you and realize that we actually have a lot in common is pretty great.
If you like this video, then you're a light worker, you're a light warrior, and we need your love and light. We need to crank it up to the max. That's why we're offering boot camps. You can check them out down below. Monday through Friday events, 1 hour a day, almost free, to help you crank your light up to the max, get you in the most positive place possible, boost your immune system to the max, and help you to help the world to shine bright. We're also offering YouTube live events every Saturday and Sunday during this time to help you overcome fear, overcome worry, overcome stress, and again, boost up your immune system. These tapping events, these boot camps, all involve group meditations where we come together, set group intention, help you help yourself, help your family, and help the entire world. You're a light worker. Your time is now, so come join us. Click below for these extra special events. I just had such a beautiful, heartfelt Why You Matter interview with Matt Emerzian. To check out more incredible interviews inspiring you on why you matter, click here, subscribe below, click on that bell icon to be notified of our upcoming YouTube lives, premieres, and shows. And be sure to join us for our upcoming boot camps and tapping programs. Click below. We have scholarships available. If you can't afford them, we're going to do everything we can to help you out. Above and beyond all else, shine bright. Love you guys. Woohoo!